the rookiest of rookie mistakes,
Did
dude.
you never cry?
Dude, I would love to look at you as my friend and go, that's the first time I've ever done this. I would love to look at you and tell you that's the first time I've done that.
I love it.
But it's not. At least that time we only talked for like a minute.
Dude,
There's been times where I've been like 15 minutes into a podcast and I'm like, hey man, we got it. All right. So you ready to go?
Ready. Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right.
I love it.
So I love that term, think tank. Think tank. I mean, you know what a think tank is? Like, how's a think tank go, Jim?
Yeah, you know they got cancel culture nowadays. You gotta watch what you say. It's getting real scary out here.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't know if I can take the conversation here, but we might as well. It's the Rethink Tank. Looks like you had a little bit too much to think here in the Rethink Tank. All right, hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining me again. We got a real special episode. It's a beautiful Saturday. You know, the weather's great for a good conversation, and because of that, I got a longtime friend who I haven't spoken to in a long time in the studio to catch up and get into some hard-hitting questions. So, without further ado, my friend Connor Kobilarcsik, thank you for joining me, bro.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I'm stoked to be here.
Connor and I literally got like 5 minutes into a conversation before I realized I didn't hit record on the audio board here. So we're still learning. We're only like 12 episodes in a new studio. So, and like I said to him, I would love to pretend this was the first time I've ever done that, but we're learning here. Anyway, so Connor has started his new profession as a realtor, and I have a lot of deep questions, hard-hitting questions for him. But before we get into that, I would like to get kind of just a basis of this new beginning for you. You've gotten your license. You're starting in a new profession where the economy is kind of at a question mark. So I'm curious to see how that has had an effect on your practice, just hitting the ground running. Mm-hmm. So please give us kind of an introduction to you and this new profession you're taking on.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been licensed now for 8 months. So That's like
awesome.
a young spring chicken. And yeah, I mean, I was working a W-2 job. I was a social worker for 6 years. And there came a point where I started to get this entrepreneurial bug, and real estate is a great gateway because it's entrepreneurial, sort of. Like, the basis is there, right? Like, the market's there. It's been tested and proven. Like, it's not a true entrepreneurial thing where you're starting something from scratch. You are to a certain extent, but the groundwork has been laid. Like, the market's out there for you to go out there. You just need to work hard and learn and all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I got my license. 3 months ago, I quit my other job. I left, and now I'm, full-time 1099 employee.
Independent.
Yes,
That's
sir.
it. You work for you, baby.
Yeah.
So how has that had an effect on like scheduling and stuff? Because it is what you make of it. The more you put in, the more you can get out. But sometimes, wasted effort can hurt you too. You don't want to overexert yourself. So kind of how has that been adapting to this new process been for you? And then also, what is it like working for yourself, taking on your own schedule?
For sure. I love it. I mean, I am way busier than I would ever be with a 9-to-5 job. The hours are definitely longer. For me, it's perfect because like my only responsibility is myself. Essentially, as far as like financially, right? So it's the perfect time for me to do it. Like, I had a cushy savings. I set myself up okay. I'm pretty financially conservative in that regard. But yeah, I mean, it's been great. That was the other reason I wanted to get into something because I love to work. I'm here to work. I'm young. I got energy. And I wanted to do something where the more I work, the more effort I put in, boom. You know what I mean? I can get the results.
Well, and the beauty of it right now, we had that conversation earlier, like talking about our parents. Imagine if you had kids, right?
Sure.
Like I have this project of mine that I've sold 8 hours of my day to the government. And then I come home and I've got an hour I need to get my fat ass running. And then somewhere in there, I need to put in as much time into this thing as I can. And when we're talking about like, oh, are you doing the editing too? Like we'll sit here, we'll talk for an hour, 2 hours. And then it's going to take for that 2 hour podcast, I will probably have to do at least 8 10 hours
Right.
into editing. And
Right.
so when you sit there and you go, look at all these hours being exhausted, overexhausted to, an audience of 80 people. I can't financially exploit that yet.
Right.
But what you tell yourself, the carrot at the end of the stick that keeps you running
Right.
is that the goal is hopefully one day this overtime that you're putting in and overexerting pays off to the point where soon you'll have a clientele that feeds itself. And,
that's 100%.
maybe at 35, you beat your ass at 25, 28, but at 35, you've now got a brand, a name, a clientele that peddles itself, and you get to sit back and reap the fruits of your 27-year-old young whippersnapper self. Right?
That's the goal. I mean, that's the goal. And the other goal is to like create passive income through real estate investing, right?
Yes.
And like when I started to get into the idea of investing, I was like, okay, that sounds great, but I'm not making enough money to do that. So that's kind of the other point of it, right? Like passive income is the goal.
So explain that to me. Explain to the audience passive income, how you would seek that. Like what's the goal or the path you see getting to that point?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the first goal would be to like acquire my first single family rental. Essentially, right? And then having that cash flow every month coming in. So cash flow is just the money that you get after everything has been paid for the mortgage, insurance, all that kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, from the rent that you're getting from the tenants, you get that end cash flow on the end, and you're not really doing anything to get that. I mean, of course, you're dealing with tenants and whether or not you hire a property management group and stuff like that, but you're getting that passive cash flow income every month. And the bigger you build your portfolio, the more passive income you get. Right. So that's kind of, but you need the capital to get there.
So let me pick your brain on something. Like right now, us as young guys, like we're at a pivotal point in our lives, right? I just spent 3 years away going into further debt in law school to come home to, I've been living on my own 4 years in college, 3 years in law school, 7 years away, and now I'm a basement dweller back at my parents' house, right?
Hey, dude, I was there for 3 years. I lived with my dad for 3 years. So I just moved out a year
man,
ago,
sometimes you get some free meals.
Yeah, dude.
I got a door in the basement for myself. It comes and goes. A beautiful home.
Yeah,
I literally can't complain.
No, yeah.
But
yeah.
it comes to that point where, like, we rely on these apps to make a social relationship, and then you meet some stranger and you're like, want to come back to my basement? It's got a hot tub. They're like, yeah, it's still a basement. So like, it's really hard you want to keep these impressions.
For sure.
A lot of people want to get from under the thumb of their parents.
For sure.
X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But we also live in a world where, sometimes things are better left. Sometimes it's better to wait. Let things blossom on their own. As much as eager as you may be, sometimes the better result comes from letting it ferment. 100%. And so, as much as I want to get out, the option also would be instead of the money that I'm putting away, because back to your point about passive income, my first goal. We have a friend, Kyle Turkovich, that went to school with us. He saved up, worked, and bought a duplex. He's in Lakewood. That's my goal. That's
the way to go.
I want a duplex. That way, you've got one floor that's paying the rent and paying the mortgage, and you're living for free. And now, hopefully, in some period, you own property. And that's the key, is own property. Because remember, we're going to get to it, but the warlords above us have told us, you will own nothing and be happy with that. And so as people are increasingly getting comfortable with that forced statement, I am of the camp where you got to get your own. You need to, back to the Wild Wild West. Run into Oregon and on your Oregon Trail. Like, you just got to have the property. So what is your opinion of kids or if maybe you have a message for people our age that are just so eager to get out from under the thumb of their parents that, yes, I'm still saving money, but not as much as I could because I got a sexy apartment. Sure. Or I'm leasing this, leasing a condo, whatever it could be, to where you won't own it at the end of the lane, and now somebody else is paying their mortgage off of your back. Right. So, what is kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. It's a good question. I mean, I'm a financially conservative person. Like, I like to have money in the bank or money in some kind of interest-bearing account. You know what I mean? So, I if I didn't live at my dad's for 3 years, I own a condo. That wouldn't have happened.
Boom, boom,
So
boom,
it is, you know, for me, like I was lucky enough to live at my dad's house, right? Like for real, you know, I mean, for all the reasons you said, like there came a point where I was like, okay, now I need to go, but it's good. I mean, if your parents are going to let you live there, like in my opinion, like I tell people you should do it because, I mean, if you're going to go and begin your journey of purchasing a home, let's put it that way. There's so many costs associated with being a homeowner, right? So if you don't have money in the bank, like my recommendation is always like, you don't want to be house poor. So if you can save, because you need money for down payment, closing costs, and that's just during the transaction. Then what happens when a furnace goes out? What happens when your roof needs to be replaced? I mean, you know, all these kinds of things. So it's like I always tell people, like, if you need to be able to look at what it's going to cost to close this deal and then still feel comfortable after that. So my advice is if you have to rent an apartment because you can't live at your parents' house, like I'm just someone who would rent like a less expensive apartment or have a roommate. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Like my brother just moved downtown into this really dope apartment at Residences at Leader. It's like right on West 6. Oh, yeah. Super dope. But he's living with a roommate. So like it's like $750 each a month. It's 2-bedroom, 2-bath, but you live with a roommate. I mean, that's not that bad. $750 is pretty good for rent, right? Especially living downtown.
And let's be honest with you, you're still going to get what are you really paying for? Privacy, right? Like you want to remove yourself from that world, and you know a roommate's not going to be telling on you. So there's a beauty to it.
For sure.
I totally get. Plus, it's just there's a comfort, camaraderie. Mm-hmm. But one thing I've also learned through my life of roommates is, you know, the struggle with that is sometimes you could be friends with somebody, but you can't live with somebody.
Oh, 100%.
And that's the key. It's difficult to find somebody that shares the same OCD, some would say, concerns of, like, you know, you're washing your dishes and keeping the place clean. Like, some aren't like that. And the last thing you want to be is tied to a lease with somebody who
100%. I mean, dude, as people who have lived with me will attest, I was a horrible roommate. For so many reasons that we may or may not have to go into, but it was a horrible roommate. As I've gotten older, I've grown more.
Sure,
so now, you know, my place is immaculate. It's clean, and I've become that person now. But I mean, now that I've lived on my own, I will never have another roommate.
Boom, 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 boom. That's where I'm at. I will take my parents before so I go to law school, and there were a lot of kids from out of state.
Yeah.
And they would just link up with somebody on the Facebook page, a total stranger, and live with them. Yeah. And just like watching these parallel lives of like, wow. They're like, this sucks. I'm like, I bet. Like, that looks miserable.
Are you surprised? Like,
dude, I want to hear your thoughts on this, and then we'll get back to it. But how has it been? And I want to see if you can relate to this, but I'll still pose it as if you naturally experience it the same.
Sure.
But how does it feel watching yourself increasingly become a homebody? I mean, dude, I have a flipping candle in front of me. I walked in here and the first thing... Yeah, it does!
That was the first thing I noticed when I walked in.
First thing I did was walk in here and light my candle. My dad's like, what are you doing buying all these candles? I'm like... Dude, light it. You pour yourself some wine.
It's all about the smell.
That's it. Anytime I walk past, I'm like,
it's all about the smell.
And I don't know what is with the candle invoking the feeling of like, I'm treating myself. Yeah. Like, no, it's just a
self-care.
candle.
In the name of self-care. Trust me, I have become a smell person. I have candles. That was like literally the first thing I noticed when I walked in. I was like, oh, he's got a good smell going on. I have specifically Mediterranean lavender air fresheners all around my condo. This is my favorite smell. I won't let them go empty.
So again, now I can know for sure that you relate to this, but we are becoming old people so fast.
It happens quick.
You know, so Connor pulled up in the parking lot, and I was talking to my uncle, and he's got a family friend. So he's got this kid doing the same job I did growing up, just being my uncle's bitch. And, you know, the kid's probably like 12, 10. He's in middle school. And just picking his brain. So... my uncle, he brings up this story about California. And he goes, you see that video? And I'm like, no, I didn't. I filed it away because I'm going to do a whole segment on California. I have a file.
You got a lot.
I've been doing
this
new segment. So here's where I'm at. And it's just me, and they've been killer. I've done 4 of them so far. And so the next, coming soon will be California. So I filed it away. I'm like, no, I didn't see it. What was it? He goes, well, this new thing that the kids are doing, do you know what it is? And he was like, well, what are you talking about? And my uncle goes, what they do is all these cars come to like an intersection and they block off the intersection, and like guys are doing donuts in the intersection. Everybody gets out and they're cheering. And then finally the cops come and scare everybody away, and they all disperse, and they try to chase like 2. But then, it's not legal to chase people anymore. So they get away, and it's all over. And he looks at the kid and he goes, do you know what that's called? And he's like, yeah, just a car meetup. It's called a car meetup. And first he looks at me, he goes, do you know what it is? I'm like, I don't know. He knows. He will know. And he's, he comes up to our knees, and he's like a major fraction of our age. And I go, he'll know. It's a car meetup. It's a car meetup. So the conversation quickly develops to like, Uncle Michael. Oh, so he goes, we let that comment die. He then later, like 2 minutes later, brings up like, I don't get why kids think like they deserve a voice. Like 16, 15. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so the conversation developed into like, I disagree. Yeah. There should be a difference between, he goes, 16, you shouldn't be able to vote. They can't vote, nor should they. But we're talking about vote versus voice.
Right.
Vote is a way to display that voice, but like, this 12-year-old kid should be able to exclaim his opinions against the Vietnam War. You don't have to vote according to them, but he should be able to express them. Yeah. And the conversation turned into how I'm like, Uncle Michael, I'm 27, and I'm watching the world pull away from me so fast. I go, you know what an NFT is? You don't know what an NFT is. And I'll be honest with you, he impressed me. He did have a pretty rudimentary understanding of what an NFT was. And so he explains what an NFT was. Like I said, I was impressed. But again, it goes a step further. You start picking his brain even further. He's got a rudimentary understanding. But then this 12-year-old kid, he's probably making NFTs and making money off of them. So it's a delicate balance, and I go on this long tangent because I'm 27, and I'm watching the world pull away from me, and everyone else around me is like, you're still a kid. You're still so young. You got the world ahead of me. And then we wonder why we're all facing our own mortality, because you're like, I'm almost at the end of the road. And everybody's like, no, dude, you're still a baby. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think that it is that age where we're at right now where you do start to feel like you're good. I feel like I'm just turned 28. I mean, I feel young, to be honest, because I think it's because I hang out with a lot of people who are older than me. But at the same time, you're right. It's like little things like that little thing.
But talking about the situation about the younger generation compared to the older generation, I am so amazed at like the older generations need to stay relevant. Like, no. Silence them. I still got it. Like, tradition knows. Like, you need to talk to your older folk.
For
and
sure.
I agree.
I agree
you
with that too.
Totally need to have conversations with older people. But I think what's even more overshadowed is how exponentially fast these children are moving away from us. And I want to get back to the heart of the point is, so now I'm at 27 and we're balancing this struggle of like, I'm still young and relevant. I got it. I'm hip. Right. But you go on TikTok, you have to force yourself to adapt no cap or adopt no cap.
I just heard what that was.
Right. It's a boom, 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 boom.
I just heard that word.
And so now
my brother just told me, I'm like, wait, when did I miss that? He's like, my brother said like no cap. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean?
And dude,
I'm like, wait,
we're at the precipice of the world moving away from us. And so
like, I never heard that. Now I'm hearing it everywhere. I'm like, I just never knew I didn't know we were saying that.
So, how crazy is it? They're coming out with terms. I looked at my uncle, I go, these kids are talking with like hieroglyphics, with emojis, and you got to have a newscast go, this eggplant means penis. Yeah. And it's like, if that's on Fox 8 News, like, they're well past that, baby cakes. Like, it's...
Yeah, we're as far as like terms like no cap, like I do feel myself like I don't know all the different, and maybe it's because I'm pretty internet savvy, but I'm probably not the most internet savvy person for my age group. So new terms and stuff, I don't know what they are. I had no idea.
Right.
No clue.
I want to kind of transition into a conversation that wasn't planned for, but while we were talking about it before the podcast, I was like, this is such a sweet conversation.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
I love this.
I love this.
So I look at it as a virtue of our generation, Like looking at my sister and your brother, they are either right at the tail end of it or they're kind of swept out of it.
How old's your sister now?
She is 23.
Okay, my brother's
24.
My brother's
24.
turning 26.
So your brother was a year older, 2 years younger than
2 years younger than us.
So he's definitely more in it than my sister. And I look at my sister and she's
like right.
And
she's like 4 years younger than us.
Right. She's three. I'm going to turn 28 in a week and a half.
So high school,
2019. We were 16, she was 19. Or no, we were 12. We were talking about high school, she was 2015.
Okay, so she's not that much younger than us. Okay. So she's like 3 years.
Right.
Okay.
So, but again, what's interesting is when you go to like Google and stuff and you look at like, you know, people call themselves millennials and are like, you're not a millennial. You're a Gen Z. And we don't really know where that line is. Yeah. And when you go to like Google, it's very vague. Like, it kind of explains my sister, which would mean your brother is certainly in, and then sometimes it's like, no, they're really a Gen Z. It's a gray area. But regardless, I think we look at our generation, like our year, maybe a year younger, and definitely a year younger, but maybe a year younger than that.
Sure,
and then it really gets gray and falls off. But what was cool about that period in time was like we had computers, but those computers did not exceed what the disk you put in it was, right? So if you were going to play Putt Putt Goes to the Zoo,
oh my God, shut the fuck up. I haven't heard that game. Bro, I haven't heard about that game in so long.
But when you throw in like, you know, Pajama Sam and you're playing this game, right? Like your experience on that computer did not exceed Putt Putt, right? Like you were finding the lions across but that was it. Like and there was no, you know, sneaking off into E-Bomb's world. It was, you were really limited to that capacity.
Right.
Then as we got older, you know, we had dial-up. So like Mom wants to call someone, so you got to get off the internet.
Yeah, I was just talking about that with a friend the other day about dial-up.
But so how did that conversation go?
I have this conversation like an oddly large amount because I'm obsessed with it. I just think it's interesting. I love psychology and just like, I don't know if psychology, it's more like sociology, just like the way people function and think and like why they do.
Yeah.
And like, I just think it's so intertwined, like to our point we were talking about before, like how we grew up, maybe being like the last age group that like didn't really have instant access to the internet when we were kids. So we were just talking about like, it's like little things. Like one of the funny things I saw is how we hold the phone up like this, but now they hold it like this, like little shit like that, like dial up.
Can real quick though, do not lose your point because I want you to continue. But that makes no sense to me. I look at these little morons and I go, when did you ever? Hello?
First of all,
hello?
That was exactly what I thought.
You're still holding the phone.
No one goes. And first of all, who the hell talks on their phone like that?
And you know, at the end of the day,
speakerphone or AirPod,
right?
Like,
boom.
I don't remember the last time I talked on the phone like this.
Not even just flat-handed. Hello. And the real question is, the heart of your point is, all of our experiences is hand-free. I'd rather you go like this. This is me on the phone. Like
literally, I was talking to someone asked me how I like my AirPod because I always have it in my ear. I'm that guy. I'm that guy.
You know what drives me? It cracks me up. I'll have my AirPod in my ear, and then somebody will come in my office to like ask me a question. I'm talking to them. They're like, Are you listening to something? Like, no. Like, just one little tap. Go. Like, are you listening to something while I'm talking to you? Yes, I'm listening to Beethoven.
No, I know. I mean, I was a hater on the AirPod. Before I ever got one, I was like, those are stupid. And
I think it was the marketing of the AirPod, right? It became an internet meme, and you only,
For sure.
I want to talk about, we're not going to talk about the show itself.
Yeah.
But take something like Squid Game, right? That new TV
I'm just
show.
watching it. So I'm like episode 5
All right.
now.
Well, good. That's perfect. You have an understanding.
I'm having nightmares every night.
I keep seeing Squid Game. And I go, this is how the warlords that control us work. When you see like a mass flood, that is just to provoke action. Like
it's marketing.
Boom.
Genius.
It is. Marketing is a fancy corporate word for manipulation.
100%.
And so
100%. The best kind of marketing is manipulation.
The best. So I keep watching and I'm like, shit, this is really going to be a story I'll like. Like I know it. And I did. I succumbed. And I ended up loving it.
I love it.
And I turn away from stuff like that consciously because it's like, I'm some egoist. Like, I'm not going to let you control me.
I'm 100% the same way. I'm an automatic anti.
Yes.
Like anything that people like, and I'm the worst kind of one because I'll eventually go do it.
Yeah. So back to the heart of the point of AirPods.
Yeah.
AirPods, the thing starts of like, get it. It's for rich people. Like the meme was rich people, AirPods, rich people.
For sure.
My sister goes and gets one instantly. These are the greatest things ever. And I'm like, no, a meme beat you. You lost to a meme.
Stupid.
That's how I looked at it forever. Then, because this is how much of a shitty brother I am. I look down my nose. You succumb to a meme.
Yeah.
A meme beats you. And then my sister, who's got nothing but love for her asshole brother, I take the bar exam and she goes to buy a new like iPhone or something. And with this bundle deal, she gets a free pair of AirPods. She's already got one. So she just shows up at home and gives it to me. Now, that's the only way an AirPod was going to...
Our younger siblings are too good for us.
They're way too good for us. And so this thing transpires in my life where it never else would have been. And... dude, when I say it has changed my... I was...
Life-changing.
When we brought the podcast back, I went into deep with how, like, a lot of my working out has been running, and I hated running growing up.
Okay.
Dude, my evolution through that it ended with me having the string through my shirt.
Oh yeah, the classic.
And then clipped to my... I would get like those like black, teeth clips. I would clip this thing to my shirt because it would like wrap around my giant tits behind my back. It was all over my body.
High school, dude.
Yes.
You'd have it under the shirt. That was like cool as hell.
So now it's like, wow. A whole world has opened. Just boop, boop. Just shut up. And it's wild.
Life changing. It really is. And I am that person, and anyone who knows me will tell you. I'm the biggest hater in the world, and then I'll end up doing it. Like, I suck with that stuff. I'll be like, I don't want to do anything everyone else is. I've always been like that. I've been like, everyone's doing that. It's not cool. I don't want to do it. I'm like some hipster or something. I'll always succumb to it. I had the original AirPods. They broke because I don't know how to take care of things. And then I just got the new AirPod Pros. Bro, life-changing.
Yes.
They're like noise canceling. They're amazing. I'm at the gym. Do you have the new ones?
No, yes. Okay. Yes. The ones that, they're shooting opposite vibrations out to like...
They're amazing. At the gym, I can't hear anything. But I always have that in my ear. Always in my ear. Because it's... like, there's nothing better than being able to answer your phone and then just carry on about your business and talking on the phone.
It's
the best.
The coolest thing that I didn't think would be awesome, I never even double tap anymore. Just pull that bitch right out, and it pauses everything.
Oh, dude.
And,
yeah, 100%.
And the second it goes right back in your ear, it picks up right where you left off.
It's the best. I'm obsessed with them, yeah.
So real quick, what do you think of Squid Game?
All right, so... first of all, I am a huge fan of South Korean films ever since Parasite. Really? Did you see Parasite?
Parasite, when I perceived it, I took it in as just sheer propaganda due to its timing and everything else. So I have totally exiled it. Okay. But everybody loves it. So tell me about it.
I love psychological thrillers. Like, the weirder the movie, the better. I like strict horror films. I like a lot of different kinds of movies. I'm not a big action movie guy. I do like it, but I'll never put one on. If someone puts on an action movie, I'll watch it. I like I want to feel uncomfortable during the movie or show, which Squid Games does. You're just like, what the fuck? I love
every episode the whole time.
It's fucked up.
I look at it as Saw, but it's not like
it is kind of.
It's
like
not
that.
the shit. It's Saw. I describe
Less
it as
horror,
Saw as in
like
it's equally as gruesome, but like what you're watching it for is, like you were saying, the psychological experiment, not the shock factor of gore.
I mean, I just love the societal commentary on in movies. So, like, that's why I loved Get Out, which he's fucking killing it with movies. Those are my kind of movies. Like, Get Out's, like, my favorite. I just like the societal comment on it. Like, oh, you're in debt. And then, like, well, I'm not going to give too many spoilers, but essentially they're giving them a chance to... They say it's the fair way to give them a chance to redeem their life. I mean, is he wrong? Like,
dude,
I mean, he is giving them
incredible.
He is giving them a chance.
And the key is how. So I want to bring up one thing. Yeah. I'll put it on the podcast here.
Yeah.
But there is an experiment. I think it's called Milgram's experiment.
Okay.
The Ash experiment is one of psychology's oldest and most popular pieces of research. A volunteer is told that he's taking part in a visual perception test. What he doesn't know is that the other participants are actors, and he's the only person taking part in the real test, which is actually about group conformity.
Please begin. The experiment you will be taking part in today involves the perception of line length. Your task will be simply to look at the line here on the left and indicate which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. So, for example, if you
the actors have been told to match the wrong lines. The volunteer will be monitored to see if he gives the correct answer or if he goes along with the opinion of the group and gives the wrong answer. In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1. 1.
Two.
1. Once again, the correct answer is 2.
3. 3. 3.
3.
3.
The Ash experiment has been repeated many times, and the results have been supported again and again. We will conform to the group. Again, we're very social creatures. We're very much aware of what the people around us think. We want to be liked. We don't want to be seen to rock the boat, so we will go along with the group. Even if we don't believe what people are saying, we'll still go along.
1. 1. 1. 1.
Group dynamics is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology.
And it emphasizes every time humans conform. Mm-hmm. And so
100%.
What I thought was the most interesting about that experiment...
That's a cool experiment. I love that stuff.
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
And so what I like about Squid Game is... And here's the thing. I like these types of commentaries because even though, like a god, these writers are kind of creating a reality. Like, this isn't true.
Yeah.
So you can't take this commentary or this type of, like... interpretation as like how it would actually play out. It can't be something tethered to reality. But if you treat it as maybe something real, but as a thought experiment to think through as you're watching it, I think the results of your thought experiment can be real and can be fruitful. So I only say that because I love these types of shows because I love wrestling with the experiment of the human experience. Like, how would a human experience this thing? How would you experience it? They do a great job of showing the different personalities.
Well, and they do that. They're like, you can go, but they all end up coming back. Like, I knew that was going to happen, obviously, but like, it's an interesting point. Like,
dude, just wait. The way this thing unfolds.
I'm stoked.
The way you see. I'm going to be real with you. I finished this thing in like 3 days. The second it started.
I just started watching it on like Monday. I've been watching like 2 episodes a night. I might almost be done. I don't even know what episode I'm on. Like 6.
So good.
How many episodes are there?
There's 9.
Okay,
and
I'm
like
almost there.
7, 8, 9. It's just like.
I'm almost there.
Dude, it's wild. It's such a good show.
It's a good show. They kill it over there. Like, for real, South Korea. Like, I had no idea either until I saw Parasite. I was like, I didn't know these guys made like crazy movies.
And let's be really real with the production quality of this show is higher than a lot of American shows right now.
Yeah,
like, it's high.
It's cool. They do a good job. I mean, I think it, and even with the voice dubbed over, like did you ever see Dark? Did you ever watch the show Dark? No. So confusing. It's a crazy show, but that was the first one. Me and my dad started watching. This is when I lived with my dad. We used to watch all kinds of stuff together, and we watched Dark. Crazy show. You can't watch it by yourself because it's so confusing that you need someone to bounce ideas back off of, like,
Okay.
what just happened kind of thing. It is, but it's a German movie dubbed over in English.
Oh, cool.
So it's like the same thing as Squid Games. And like, it's actually not that bad. At first I thought it would annoy me, but you get used to it. You're just like,
You do.
Like,
Squid Games was not bad at all.
no, it was better than Dark.
Job.
They do a good job. I mean, the voices are like funny, but you get used to it after a while.
love the voice.
I know,
the
I think it's
voices
great.
are like, American guys
Yeah, I
and
know.
girls like over
I know.
these.
It doesn't match at all. You're just like, oh, okay, like.
But also, I thought that's what made it, like, by the last episode, there's this scene, and it's like a very pivotal scene, and you're watching it, and it's like, if they had some person like, oh, he said, this is where the fight goes. Like, you would have lost me 5 episodes ago. Yeah. Like, I'm watching this going like, it's the ignorance of the American experience, and fuck me for it. But also, like, you would have lost me if it wasn't like, I'm going to kill you.
It adds
like,
to it.
It does.
It adds to it. It does, for sure. It adds to, like, the weirdness of it.
Yes.
Because you're like, that's not what your voice sounds like. Just totally different person's voice, just dubbed over. Mouth isn't even moving the same way.
I know this is totally off subject, but even worse, before you got here, I'm on my Snapchat, and I never click these things because they drive me nuts. But they have, like, they take your face and they take, like, your friend's face, and they make, like, a little mini video clip of, like, it's like a mini movie trailer.
Okay.
And it puts me and my buddy Kemp, we're doing this video, and it's like, hey, we're going to do this heist. And he's like, I got a team, and the voice, it's 2 guys in suits. But, like, my buddy sounds like Trump. If you go watch this video, I'll put it in here just so people can watch it. He sounds like Trump. And then it pans to me, and it's a dude in a suit, and it's so clearly a chick's voice. Like,
we're going to rob every vault in Vegas.
You're gonna need an amazing crew. And fast.
This summer,
we got a heist! We're gonna get... And you're just like, none of this matches! Like, who's getting entertainment value out of this? And Snapchat spent how much money developing, like, the coding and everything
I know,
for this?
they can't even figure that out. That's great.
So let's get back to the heart of what's going on here. Real estate, right? So...
Okay, yeah.
I want to have a hard-hitting question for you, because I would love to hear your thoughts. I need to keep myself tethered to this reality. I think the pandemic and just the sheer nonsensical, aspect of our lives anymore. Like, we're being lied to. I can't trust anybody. I just feel like we're damned.
For sure.
So when I look at this kind of situation with real estate right now, we have a situation where properties are being sold for like 3, 4, 5 times their value. I mean, just crazy amounts. And, you could say, well, look, that market value's going up. The problem is, you've got homeowners that are like, I could sell my house right now, get it way more than what it's worth. But then, like, where are you going to move to? You're going to be able to pay for somewhere else 3 times what it's worth.
For sure.
And then when it comes to, like, the contracts and negotiations themselves, you have regular, take our generation, people that are trying to start a new life, younger families, and they go to buy property. And there's this phenomenon where these corporations, the Gateses of the world, are coming in and for some reason buying up all the property. And we're watching major developments being bought up at unaffordable prices to the common folk by giant corporations. Now let's go back to what I was talking about earlier, when you have, the World Economic Forum coming out and saying you will own nothing in the future and be happy about it. So are we watching that transpire? Are we watching the warlords above us buy up all our property, make it unaffordable, and making it cushy and comfortable to get your luxurious condo apartment in somewhere fancy that you would love to be located, but at the end of the road, you will own nothing and still be happy about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough on the second part of that to make. I do know that is happening.
Yeah, right.
The answer is that that I have is, I mean, I'm always very, well, I'll do the first point. So I will say that there are homes in certain neighborhoods, especially in Cleveland, like Lakewood's a bloodbath. Like everything's going over asking price. Cam's Corner, certain parts are bloodbath. A lot of places are, okay. There's when something goes over list price, realtors put that list price is really just a price that we're determining between the owner and myself to bring it to the market.
Sure.
That's not technically its market value. Right?
Okay.
The buyer is going to decide what its market value is, and then the appraiser is going to decide what the value is.
Sure.
If there's financing involved. So a strategy that people use in these kinds of markets is to price it under market value to get those multiple offers that'll bring it over market value. Okay? So like, yes, homes are selling at way over list price, but there's also, I just closed a deal with the buyer and we came in under list price, $3,000 under.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's still the headlines.
So it's not as drastic as like the
it's pretty crazy, but it's not. There are still reasonable deals going on now. If you have a turnkey, gorgeous property in Lakewood, like
it's over.
Yeah, just because like those cities are growing a lot.
Oh
right?
Yeah.
So like everyone wants to live in Lakewood. Seriously, I mean, and I don't really.
And you know what? You raise a really great point, and this is a phenomenon that's got everybody alarmed. But also, it's a phenomenon happening in majorly developed areas, right? Like Lakewood
for sure.
is snowballing because that's where the market is going. Like
for sure.
Younger kids, that's where the scene is, and
for
so
sure.
like people are moving out of the Brecksvilles and the Broadview Heights
people
to
are
go
to
to Lakewood.
Well, that's why they're developing. Like, look at Tremont. I mean, the new builds going on up there are crazy, and I love them. That's where I want to live. Like,
yes.
My goal would be to live in a townhome up there. I'm obsessed with them. But they're like $400K, so it's expensive. But yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot of like appraisals coming in under, but then people bring cash to the table and so I'm prefacing this. I'm new to the whole game, right? So I'm learning, but from everything I've learned, this isn't like a 2008 because 2008 was solely based on the kind of financing people were getting to buy homes. So 2008 happened because people were giving basically shady loans. They were giving them ARM loans, which means that adjustable rate mortgages and balloon payment mortgages. So basically, like you wouldn't have to put a lot down, but they were going to charge you a lot in the future, and that's why people went into foreclosure so much because they got this home. They should have never gotten a loan in the first place.
Boom.
So like right now, we're just experiencing like extremely low inventory. There's just not enough homes. Because apparently, and this is once again, I'm learning as I'm going, but from things I read over the last 5 years, there hasn't been nearly as much new construction across the whole board.
Okay.
So they're trying to catch up.
That makes sense.
I will say that things have started to but yeah, I mean, things are still crazy. I mean, there's no way getting around that, right? Like, things are crazy. And so, but it's one of those things. I haven't been in the game long enough to like fully understand market shifts.
Sure.
Like I came into real estate and I'm in a seller's market. I have no idea what a buyer's market looks like. I have no idea what a healthy market looks like, which is about 6 months of inventory.
Okay.
And we're at like, I think in Northeast Ohio, like a little over 2 months. So we're in like a hardcore seller's market still.
Wow.
And that basically means that if everything that was listed in my MLS right now, if nothing else new is listed tomorrow, there'd be 2 months. Everything would be gone in 2 months.
Okay. So
a healthy market's like 6 months. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time to get into the business, but I have heard there's certain big companies who will remain nameless, but pretty much everyone knows who they are buying up properties like that. Like I've heard of that, and buying them basically from what I've heard, what they're doing is they'll go into like a neighborhood and buy stuff at market value and then buy one home way over market value in cash. So it never has to be appraised. Because when you buy in cash, you're not getting financing. You don't have to get your home appraised. Your home only gets appraised if you're financing. So
oh my God.
Yeah, like if you go in, you can buy anything for cash and
that's not something a layman's going to be able to do.
No, you can only do it if you have like the cash. So the only time there's an appraisal where someone comes in and tells you the value based on comparables is if there's financing because the bank wants to know they're going to get their money.
Bro.
So yeah, so like a big company like hypothetically can come in and buy something like and then that's just a new comp. So now all those houses' values, like when someone goes to sell their next house, they can
look at this house. So how about
so
this
like
one?
it's hypothetically it's a very real situation. Like
Jesus.
Yeah.
So here's another thing you drew upon that I want to pick your brain on. The
Yeah.
first housing crisis that we experienced
Yeah.
was due to the fact that there were loans being made that were
shady, essentially.
Shady, very
essentially,
shady.
like these people shouldn't have been getting
Are
financing.
you aware? Are you familiar with Tim Dillon? So
Yes.
before he became famous
Right.
as a comedian, he was involved with the market crash, and all he does
Okay.
is talk about he's like, I made a shitload of money just scamming people. His loans where they should never have gotten them. It was I was a part of it, and it was a whole industry of people just riding that wave.
There weren't like from my little bit of understanding, without going into too much terms because I'm not a lender, but they were writing loans and giving people loans that weren't qualified or they wouldn't meet today's standards.
So I think you made a great strong point, which was this isn't that. This isn't
From
that.
everything I
so
read,
we
it's
can't
not.
draw on. No, you're 100%
Some
right.
people's like, I mean, you get differing opinions, but everyone that I know in the business who's been there for a long time, like realtors and stuff, like people whose opinion I trust, even though we're not like economists or anything, they say this isn't that. It might be something else,
dude,
but it's not
That's
that.
what I was. So the point I wanted to make was I think you are 100% right, and the mentors ahead of you nailed it. This isn't that. You're 100% right. This isn't that. You're not seeing people buying beyond what they can afford with frivolous loans.
It doesn't seem like it.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I still think something different might be upon us because when we look at that situation, there's definitely, like you said, and we keep hammering home, there's definitely something going on. And maybe it might be just to raise home values and so you could flip them and make more money.
I mean, hypothetically, that's I have heard of things like that happening. I mean, I love to look at scenarios like that. Like, it definitely, I mean, that's reasonable, right? Like, that's a very real thing that could happen.
Right.
And it would be smart on their decision to make a lot of money.
Especially if you have a shitload of money laying around.
If you could pay cash for properties, I mean, and essentially anyone could do that, I guess.
But I feel like there's got to be a crash that comes where you totally disinvalue those involved in the market.
Sure.
The heart of my point would be you talk about how kind of the market dictates the value. When we put a pricing up, this is just something betwing us and the homeowner, and the market is what dictates
the
its
buyers
true
are always
value.
the buyers are always going to tell you what it's worth. Yeah.
I think this is more tethered to demand than art would be, but analogously, I want to bring up art where you have something where
similar.
Did you see that guy in Italy?
There's just a value on it based on
and he sold nothing. It was just like a platform, and he's like, "This is my statue of nothing," and it was like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's like this dude literally sold nothing, and it's
art's an interesting one too because it's like really those those are just imaginary numbers people place on random paintings,
and because of that,
it is really interesting.
at least a home is tethered to some sort of demand.
Art's a weird
you
world.
own a thing, and this plot is yours. You can have the freedom and privacy on that plot, and there's actual value you can see. But also where that value starts and ends is compared to what's around it, what people are willing to pay for it, and then we look at art, and it's tethered to really nothing. And because of that, you have this wild, wild west where nefarious actions easily take place. We are totally laundering money and hiding money and doing all of these nefarious acts through art.
Yeah.
The question is, are we seeing that in real estate right now? But even more importantly, right now you can have an art world that relies on fake demand because it's peddled by people who can afford it, right? Like, you can have art worth $50 million and it's literally just like a kid's scribble because all these other rich-ass people are laundering their money through it, and we've got the money to peddle this value, keep it at that value.
Sure.
But what do we do when you go into a neighborhood? Let's say not a Brecksville, but let's say you go to, maybe Newburgh Heights.
Okay.
And you go into Newburgh Heights, and you buy up like 9 homes in a neighborhood, and You buy one with cash, you jack it up to like 4 times its value. Now, technically, you've jacked up the value of the homes around it, maybe, and even some other people might get lucky. The people who rest in the neighborhood, their values go up.
Yep.
But what do we do when that phenomenon gets to such a great extent that the layman, it's okay to have a $50 million art piece as long as you have 10 other billionaires willing to play this game.
Right.
But when the market fully becomes that, what do we do when the buyers, it's a seller's market.
For sure.
When it becomes impossible for the average buyer to even involve themselves,
For sure.
Does that question make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, is
that the next crisis?
I don't know.
It won't be that we gave them money they don't have. It's that we've made properties unaffordable for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would, like, if you're a company trying to do that, like, the goal would be to make money off of rent, because then, like, they can't afford to buy the house, so they're just going to rent them all out, right? I mean, I guess, hypothetically, the goal of that would be to, like, cancel home ownership for people, and thus, like, home ownership is, like, the gateway to wealth, and for a lot of people, right? Like, I mean, it is, like, that's the OG American.
Yeah.
It always has been the OG American way to create some kind of equity in wealth has been through home ownership. Always. Right? Like, that's been the goal. Like, that's always the goal. Maybe not for everyone, but that's a goal. Like, most people have.
Right.
And so, like, that would be, I guess, and so I haven't had any experience with that so far. The only knowledge I have of it is just things on the internet that I've read that this is happening. I think that I mean, I'm always a doubter. Like, I think that things sometimes get hyped up like they're happening, and then, like, maybe they never really do.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I don't know.
You're
like,
right. You're
because
very
part
right.
of me is always just like, well, like, I feel like that can happen. But then, like, I also, like, thought that we would never, like, not be able to go outside during. So, like, you know what I mean?
Or
like,
you thought it would go away at some point.
I'm a little bit naive in that sense with things like that, because I'm always just like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, I could see how that happens. But, like, are we really going to let that happen? I don't know.
Well, so here's
who knows?
Just like the American dream was and still is to own a home.
Yeah.
Alongside of that was to own a car. Remember, like, when you bought your first car, that was a big deal.
Yeah,
like,
for
remember, we go to school, it's like, well, he might have a nicer car, but his parents bought his car. Like, mine's a tin can, but I bought it, so I'm still superior.
Right.
So, like, the whole thing was everybody wanted to own their own car. You want to own your own phone.
Yep.
I worked at Sprint in my gap year before law school, and it was the worst experience of my life. These people would come in furious, and they're like, Sprint sucks. And I'm like, I know.
Yeah, I mean,
we are at Sprint, dude.
Like, what?
Sprint
This isn't Verizon?
Man. I'm looking down like, I have AT&T for a reason, dude. Yeah,
I don't even have this service.
And so you have people that would come in, and the funniest part was, this was right when Trump got elected. The Obama phone was gone. We took it away, and so people would come in and they'd be furious. They'd be like, I want my free phone. And they're like, well, we got this LG for you. That's all we got. And they're like, no, I want the iPhone 8. And you're like, dude, I don't even have an iPhone 8. Those aren't free anymore, baby cakes. And they would get so pissed. They just cuss you out, and you're like, you're not getting a better phone than me for free, big dog. And these phones have become unaffordable, right? They're now almost like a car, dude. This was, at the time, it was the iPhone 8. That was a cutting edge phone. And it was going for like $1,200. And so these people who clearly couldn't afford it. It's funny. Homeless people can't afford the meal for today, but homeless people always find a way to afford their phone bill now. Like, that's the priority. We have shifted. Like, so I digressed mildly, but I to the heart of the point. When it comes to, like, these phones, you'd have people that could so clearly not afford them, but they still needed it. Yeah. So they would happily lease it. And growing up, I remember when I got my car, Mrs. Foster, she was like, Nick, don't even worry about it, because leasing a car is the dumbest move a person could ever make. You want to own a car. And there's this, like, pride, and I always took that. I will never forget that moment, because I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing leasing a car? But now I'm 27, right? I can't afford great things.
Right.
But I got a brand new Challenger, and in a year, I will just maybe a couple dings here and there. I'm just going to hand that off to someone else as their problem and get a brand new top of the line one. So while the dream was and the pride was in owning a car, so quickly I found myself happily and pridefully telling everyone, you should lease a car. It's so much better. Right. And now companies like Volkswagen and even Ford, they will put you on a program where you pay a monthly lease, and then every year you'll get the brand new car. Like you do this program with the Ford, you get the brand new Ford truck once a year. And now you don't own a car, so it's never yours.
So you're paying just like you're just leasing it always.
And so it could be repossessed. All this stuff is you've lost that property, but you pridefully take it. The phone, it's not yours. And at some point you will have to turn it back in. Like you go into our closet, we have all the generations like a rainbow in a closet, just accumulating.
Right.
While as many people just turn in their shattered junk and get a brand new one.
That's what I do.
And again, it's just a shelf full of shattered junk anyway.
I think I've done it for everyone.
So, and now I'm finding myself on the same thing. Why do that? Why pay more for something that is going to become null and void in 3 years anyway?
And I think with the car, I am open to leasing my next car because I want to get it once I get some money. I want to have a nicer car than I have. I love my car. It's a Toyota RAV4. It's fine, but I want like a sports car. Right. Okay, and I can afford to probably lease one.
Boom! I could never afford my car.
I think the big difference is between a car and a home would be that home real estate typically appreciates over time.
Yes.
Your car, not as much, right? So as long as you take care of your home, you're probably
even
going
then
to
you
make
might not
money.
need to, right? Because you could have something like a condemned building, let's say.
Yeah.
There's still so much value in the destruction of that building and being able to develop it with a new property.
For sure. I mean, it's like there's so many factors to it. I mean, paying rent is convenient if you don't know where you want to live. You're young and there's no reason to buy a home unless you're going to be there, in my opinion, for at least 5 years. Okay. I mean, if you're there for less years, that's fine. People, 3 years, whatever. But you don't want to buy a home and then sell it the next year. You're not going to make any money, or you're going to lose money after closing costs and everything. You haven't had enough time to gain any equity in it.
Okay.
There'd be no point.
Right.
I mean, if you had to sell, that's fine. But you know what I mean? So so renting makes sense in a lot of different ways.
Oh, big
if you
time.
don't know where you want to live.
Big time.
I mean, it doesn't make sense if you want to save money because your mortgage is going to be significantly lower than you're paying anywhere for rent. I mean, my brother and his friend pay $1,500 to live in that 2-bedroom, 1,000 square foot apartment. For $1,500 a month, you'd be. Let's see. I paid $88K for my condo. I pay HOAs because I live in a condo, which to me is 100% worth it because I don't want to do shit. And my mortgage without the HOAs is $526.
Yeah.
With HOAs, it's $900. So I live in a 1,200 square foot, 2-bathroom, two full bathroom, 2-bedroom condo for $600 less than $700 less than what my brother's living downtown. But still, I mean it's less expensive to own a home.
Yes, right.
But it doesn't always make sense.
But
if
you
you're
have
not,
to have the bank. You
have to have the money, and you have to be like, this is where I'm staying for a while.
Sure, yes, I entirely
for it to make sense. You can't I would never advise. If you're well, I want to buy it and then live there for a year. I'd be like, well, you might want to rent because if you're gonna buy something, you're gonna need to stay there for a little bit. Right. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. If you need to move, that's fine. You're probably gonna lose some money.
So wrapping up. Would you say then, if I were to exclaim the position, I want to hear, do you agree, disagree? What are your opinions of, if I were to exclaim to a listener, I think in this transitional period, it's appropriate to get an apartment. If you want your privacy, get out of your house, whatever.
For sure.
But the end goal, everything should be kind of on the trajectory of one day owning a home. So,
I think so,
if you've got a paycheck and it's $1,200 and half of it goes into a pot, that should be your goal. And the bummer is if half of that pot, half of that little nest egg you're putting away each paycheck, if half of that's going to an apartment, it better exceed its value. The value better be to you, the freedom, the luxury, the location, whatever. But also know you're taking away from the next, like the foundation of the next move, and the next move should really be the main focus. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I tell my brother, because he didn't really live at my dad's for that long. He moved out, but he wanted to have the lifestyle. He lived at Gordon Square, and now he's living downtown, and that's cool. Like that's fair. Like for me, like I told him over and over, like, dude, live at dad's. You know what? Like, why wouldn't you? I mean, and to be fair, I think like I do get it now because I don't think I would move back after I, lived out, but I lived at my dad's for 3 years.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be where I'm at if I couldn't. So if you can live somewhere and not have to pay rent or just split groceries with your parents, whatever the hell you kind of thing you guys have going on with your parents, I mean, but not everyone has that option.
I was just about to say, I think it's necessary.
I was
really
very blessed to have
me.
that option. Like,
it needs to be said that, that's a luxury not many people can.
Oh, total luxury. And mine was a luxury times 1,000 because my dad traveled for work. So I really just took care of his dogs, my dogs, and lived at home.
I guess
it's a total luxury.
I gotta say, I did a pretty good job this podcast, not being very provocative. But just before we finish, I got one just in time.
Yeah.
And I think it does come back to a conversation we had before the podcast of I don't think our privilege anymore is an immutable characteristic in our skin. And I think it's a 2-parent household. And so when people, just back to like the car situation, like in high school, people would be like, yeah, I bought this thing that barely moves. It's like, no. Don't make me feel guilty for your parents, right? And again, that's totally like, there's so many people with that become spoiled. Like, I totally agree. That isn't very good for a lot of people. But what balances that type of, what prevents it from spoiling a kid is hard labor the whole time, alongside
100%.
earning it, all of this stuff. But I digress. The main focus of the point is, let's stop drawing these fake lines that have no tether in our reality. I could judge people based on height, and you look at me like none of this is real. And the truth, the real privilege is having a home that cares about you. And if you don't think that gives, and we have admitted that totally gives us a leg up over people
100%.
around us. It has set us up for a stronger foundation as we begin our life.
100%.
But why does that, why do you need to feel guilty for that? Why is that why do we damn that? Like, I respect and my heart bleeds for the people that have had a tough life with a tough household that has made life for them hard.
Yeah.
But that's a cross their parents need to bear. Don't project that problem on other people. And again, it is luck. I didn't get to choose my parents. It's not like I was in the stork store and they were like, they look good. It's like, no. I just existed one day. I turned on and I got lucky.
For sure.
But I think what we should do, instead of fighting against the people who are lucky and trying to pull them down and damning them for it, maybe we should try to fight for a society that also makes other people just as lucky. Like, let's build that in homes, because that's a necessary thing that I think our generation, before they find their final occupation, like my dad, he started his career at 26 and he never stopped. It was that forever and always. And they talk about our generation, like, listen, I'm waiting for that day where I get called out. Like, I carry that court so much in my back. I'm waiting for the day where it's like, all right, you said it, I'm out. Like, they knock our generation for not, like, we don't care. It's like, no. Our lives are more important to us than a resume.
It's just different. We don't feel, I had this conversation, like, I don't feel the need that I have to live why did I just take a 180 and switch careers? Because why not? Like, why do I have to do the same thing? I don't need to live my life for someone else. Yeah, like, why do I need to do the same thing for my entire life?
Right.
But I mean, to your point, like, it definitely, like, I am, I had an amazing life. I have had opportunities that have put me a leg up, and probably some that I don't deserve, just considering the shit I used to do, for real. But with that being said, like, I also got my first job when I was doing a paper when I was like 11, and then I worked for years. So it's like, I was lucky enough to have like work ethic instilled in me, and I think maybe that's why I do have this drive to go out and get it for myself.
Yes,
you know what I mean. Like, I don't like it, even though my dad let me live at his house for 3 years. Like, I still yearned for my own, because I have that in me. Like my mom had her own, my dad had her own. You know what I mean? Like your parents work for it, so like it's instilled in you.
Right. That's a great point.
Yeah.
You know, so when I look at something like, you know, my privilege of where I'm at in my life, alongside of that though, we can look at plenty of kids who came from the same place as us. We all went to the same school. We all started at the same starting line, and yet the work ethic wasn't there. The discipline wasn't there, and so. For privilege, this made-up term, for that to be a universal that we can apply on people, these anomalies can't exist. You can't have people that also had the same privilege and failed. What that means is in this same position, some people, it still requires initiative. Like, you still need, like, again, there were plenty of nights where I'm in law school and I just wanted it all to end. Like, it was miserable. And yet you push through, and now you get to go, well, look at you. Aren't you privileged? It's like, yeah, but there were a lot of suffering nights that, like, nobody gets to see. They just get to see the smile, and that's all they see. So, I don't know. I feel
there's levels to it.
Yes.
You know, like, you know what I mean? As far as like, if we use the word privilege, like there's levels to it, because like, I think about this a lot. Like, I think about, did you ever watch Gossip Girls?
Oh, sure. Of course.
Like, that's what I think of. Like, I think of myself as having like, and I do have a blessed life and I always have, but like, you look at people like that, like there's levels to money and wealth and privilege, right? Like there's levels to it. Like some big levels to it that I can't even comprehend.
And what's hilarious,
you know what I mean? Like, it's like it's all about perspective.
Yes.
It's all about perspective, right? Like, I have a lot compared to someone else, you know, but it's always going to be that it's always you know.
So as we dissolve our middle class and just watch them burn away, isn't it hilarious that we take someone like you who's just not rich, just comfortable, and we can look at you and project the sins of the tax the rich Met Gala people on you. Like, you're them. Look at you. Look at you. You with your Ford Focus, and you're like, what? Like, I'm in a condo. I'm in my parents' basement,
I literally
folks.
live in Sagamore Hills.
Yeah.
It's a township in Summit County. Like,
and they look at you and they go, you're the rich. We need a tax. We need to tax you more. And it's like, I think, but that's part of the game. If we can get you guys to fight each other, like,
it's
Squid
always
Game,
been. We could go on that forever. I mean, the goal is always to take the focus off the people who are taking it off the top and put it on the people who are getting it off the bottom. It is. It really is.
So
right?
let me ask
you
100%.
Like, that's 100% what's happening.
What do we do about that?
Change everyone's perspective in the entire world.
Watch the rethink.
I'm all. There you go. I'm someone who's like, I think we're fucked in that regard.
Yeah.
Because like, it's just been instilled in us. Like, it's all. I think that kind of thing has always been instilled in us. Like, it's not the people at the top that we need to worry about. It's the people who are on welfare. It's not. You know what I mean? I think that there's. People take advantage of situations no matter where they were. But like, let's look at the people at the top. Like, no one, I mean, we do look at them, of course, but like, as a whole, people at the bottom get blamed.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, you're right.
Like, they get blamed. Like, oh, it's their fault because they're living for free. It's like, well, they're also cutting corners at the top and making money. Look at the pharmaceutical company, like, and stuff like that. Like, they're making money. They're profiting off of everything.
Or the bailouts during the pandemic.
Dude, so many.
Here's $600. Here's $3 trillion.
Like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, there's this perspective. It's like, well, now we're all getting stimulus checks. It's like, okay, the amount of money that's going out for stimulus checks is nothing compared to what's happening on the other end of this.
And
it's
like,
not even close.
We brought it up too. You know, when they're debating the greatest point, what I heard on a podcast recently, they're like, you know, the government, they just pride themselves. They exclaim all the time, we can't get anything done because we're always debating, we're always fighting. The other side's always just so antagonistic. Yeah. They prevent us from getting anything done.
Right.
And yet, instantly, we can jack up their annual pay salary. Instantly, we can all, no debate, we can all agree we're to allocate money to our lobbyists to get to these stimulus checks to big companies. Those take no debate. But then when it comes to your stimulus check, they're like, look at Nancy. She just keeps debating me. That crazy old woman, she won't stop. And it's like, huh? And so when it's things that benefit themselves, instant. So I don't know what to do.
It's genius of them. I mean, from the very beginning to like, they want people to point at each other so you don't pay attention to. I mean, and that's a whole like we could go on for hours because it's like a whole. I mean, but yeah, I mean that's essentially what they're doing there, right? Like. That's I mean that would be the goal. Like if I was a governing body and I had control, like make the minions fight amongst each other over stupid shit like $600 in food stamps a year
or a mask.
Yeah,
like we aren't wearing a mask at the Met Gala, but like you guys figure it out what you're wearing at Giant Eagle.
Yeah,
like,
it's just like it's all that kind of stuff. Like it's like okay, like. And being a caseworker, I know the amount of people get if you're on SSI. It's not a lot of money. No. And I can tell you what, like. Even all of that combined for everyone getting it, it's not that much money compared to the
bailouts.
Yeah, compared to the stuff people are cutting off the top in other areas of the world.
Right.
But it's perfect because now everyone can be like, look at these guys not working, getting free money. It's like, well, let's back up because first of all, to get approved for that, you actually have to be like sick or have a disability. Like they're just handing out checks. That's not how it works. But that's the conception of it is that like literally people are just getting handed checks. Like that's not how it works.
Right.
It's like that's not happening.
You're 100% right. But then you got to be curious why that same entity who's just scraping off the top happily is so excited to push a universal basic income, right? We're like, just everybody back to like, you won't own anything, you'll be happy. Like, just take the paycheck, stay home.
It is an interesting.
You'll get a free Xbox, and then they're like, and people will. What's crazy is how quick people are to just take the easy road
because
out.
because it seems like a good idea.
Right.
Like it doesn't to me it doesn't seem like a good idea. I'm saying to a lot of people it could seem good. Like you're like, "Oh, like that does seem like it would be positive." Like everyone has baseline salary, but like they're not giving you shit.
And they're not taking money from ExxonMobil. Yeah. Like it's not like, okay, here's this entity that can, through a super PAC can donate to a candidate 100 to 2,000 times what you can afford because your money's capped at $1,500, but they can affect an election by $20 million. And when we have these giant government affecting entities, we're not going to take money from them. They'll still have a major effect on society, but we're going to have an effect on how the limits of your property and just but we'll all have the same equality. So it's this delicate balance of like corporations are our new government. Like that's everything.
There's so many layers to things like that, right? Like, and I think like honestly, I become so bipartisan on so many things because like
that's good.
I used to think
allow yourself,
I'm super
want that,
bipartisan,
crave that.
I mean, I used to be like very much one way, and I hate this because my dad and other people would say like as you get older you learn new things, and like when you really enter the world financially and stuff, like your mind changes on things, and 100% has happened to me. Right, social issues but I still see now. I'm seeing like this last year has made me really see. Like, holy shit, like people are just trying to put me into a box. You know what I mean?
They
like
need you to.
I believe things
Your
over
own
here.
Team is putting you in a box. They're like, Connor, whoa. You have now crossed the line. You either beat the team's drum or we sacrifice you.
I know. You either believe in this or you believe in that. You either think this or you think that. It's like, well, I kind of like see both sides to it.
Right. So why does my opinion on abortion have to dictate my opinion on gun rights and my opinion on environment? Right. Like they're not associated at all.
No, not at all. And those are the big ones, right?
Yes.
Like I'm pro gun rights, I'm pro choice, like I'm this, I'm that. Like I can see both sides.
Two teams,
right?
You're
so
out.
It's like two teams. It's like I and that's on so many levels for me. Especially like socially. Like I tend to lean like very liberal socially, but at the same time, like that would be like I don't like a universal paycheck sounds fucking stupid. No, I'm not I don't know enough.
Dude, I could go on forever about that.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like I don't know enough to make have a serious opinion, but I could just see baseline why that doesn't sound like a good idea.
Well, what makes it unfair is the great minds of today, we're not even all having the same conversation, right? Like through all my philosophy classes in college, I would love to sit down and just have one day where we sit down and have the thought experiment of talking out this new, because the theme that always comes with communism is communism has always failed. Well, no, it's never been implemented correctly. That's always the default refutation. And so it's like, okay, if that's the world we want to live in, then let's talk out this thought experiment.
Yeah.
What it is to have a ton of people relying on a universal basic income. We could talk that out. But then the other side of this is the practical implementation of it. How does that look when we implement it in an American society, let's say? And how does that begin? It begins with, an Andrew Yang coming in, he becomes president or whatever, and now we put in black letter law this new social experiment. But now we got to look, the other side of this the other conversation to be had is, what does that black letter law look like? These clowns that represent us, what are they writing? And so nobody wants to head and confront the times where these clowns have put pen to paper. Let's read what they did. We want to keep talking about a fictional experiment, but let's talk about when it's actually been tethered to reality. And when we read what they have said, nobody wants to have a conversation of the language that says those unwilling to work. You want to live in a world where people are getting money for those unwilling to work are also getting money?
Right.
That's a whole different conversation. I'm not saying I'm against it, but I think it totally encourages something that snowballs in a direction we're not ready for. Yeah. And the problem is we're defaulted in, now we're all talking with each other, but we're all having different conversations. Right. So I don't know what we do about that, but that's kind of where we're at.
I don't know either. See, I'm still of the sense that like I still like sit here and always think like this shit's not gonna happen. I am like I love talk like but I'm always just like no that but like once again I like a year and a half ago I legitimately like I'll never forget it and we can end if we're getting close to the end, but this conversation and my friend will never let me live it down. We were sitting at my friend Louis' apartment about to go to a show at the Beachland Ballroom, March 2019, right before all the COVID stuff. And my friend David, who's from Denver, was like, yeah, there's this virus in China and they're like locking down and it's going to come over here. And me and Lou were like, no, it's fucking not. That's stupid. We live in America. Like they would never let that happen.
Right.
So like that was my thought opinion on that. So I can almost never really trust. Like I literally thought, I was like, no, like that, like I think sometimes like I think that these things just won't happen. Like, no, that's not going to happen.
Here's the magic, but also the damnation of this world. I took a sociology course where it was 4 days a week for an hour, and every day it was crazy. We just had this dude probably is an alien from the future. Just the way he was just so smart and he was so above us. Like you should not be at Miami University. You should totally be at like Yale. Yeah. And every day he's like, we're screwed. You guys are the worst college kids. Like your generation is going to be the damnation of us. Wake up. This government's screwed. And like half the time you showed up baked. So like I didn't know what the hell was going on. I'm just like, whatever, dude. But then like as I'm growing older, you're like, it's all clicking. It's all like, whoa, this dude predicted the future. But the thing that he really hammered on was like racism and all of these things, money. None of it's real. He's like, none of it's real. We're just entities on a floating rock in space. Social rules like don't cut lines and all of that is recreated every day. Like oh my God, if I don't go to work, I'm going to lose my job. Like none of that's real. None of that's real. If I don't get the vaccine, I won't be able to have my job. Then don't have a job. And then if we all make this stand, then guess what? Either new jobs will develop for you or they're going to succumb to your will. None of this is real. Racism doesn't exist. This line we've drawn, we decide every day to recreate it. That was always his point. We decide to recreate it every day. Now, the magic of that point is so if we could all get on the same page, and hopefully, maybe if we provoke an open discourse, maybe with the internet, this interconnectivity of ideas and people, it can happen. Pause on that point. There was, I can't remember the show. I'll have it on the bottom of the screen. But Seth MacFarlane had this show that was like a comedy show that was like a spinoff of Star Trek. Okay. And they were like the Twilight Zone. It was really cool. Each episode had a really thought-provoking theme to it. Yeah. And one of the worlds they go to is this world, and one of the crew members jumps up on a statue and he's like, look at me, look at me. And all these people instantly pull out their phones and start recording him. He committed an illegal act. So this world was run off of a social score. So every person had a social score. This guy, social score tanks, and because of this one act, he is now being legally reprimanded, let's say. They put him on a television. There's a TV channel going on in everybody's kitchen. Everybody's at the cafe. And they just bring in a guy. This guy did X, Y, and Z. This is so-and-so. He committed X. And the community, they all got their phones. You know, green thumbs up, red thumbs down. Boop, 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 boop. And you just watch. Shit. That's exactly that's what made this such a cool thought experiment. Yeah. And so you live in this world where, you know, there's this that was a crazy situation in and of itself. But the cool takeaway from it is it's probably going to be the future. I no longer want to live in a republic. Let's stop calling us a democracy and being a republic. Everybody's got one of these. Voting IDs might be racist, but as we talked about homeless people, clearly iPhones aren't. So everybody's got a smartphone. I think the future will slowly develop into a true democracy where screw you people that get paid $200,000 a year off of our salary, but somehow make $10 million a year off of nefarious acts behind closed doors. Right. We're going to totally wipe you out. We're going to have direct voice from the people. At that point, I'm wondering and I'm hoping that could go one of two ways. If we're all still under this hive mind mentality of like, you know, the line 1 matches line 3 and like, screw you, if you're not drinking the Kool-Aid, we're going to burn the witch. Like if we either fully commit to that road, then we're probably damned. But hopefully if we provoke enough open discourse, hopefully we can reach a world where we can all have these conversations and stop recreating things that don't exist, like racism. Like we talk about money. Like if we all just decide digital currency, then that's just what it is. Our friends and I, we had this long debate in college. I remember we sat there for like 8 hours. It's like 5 a.m. and we're just talking about the origin of money.
It's the classic
right?
college.
And we always reference that moment as like way too early. Yes. You know, we started at like, 10 and it's like 5 a.m. and we're still, somewhere down the line, money was developed as a representation of trade, but it started as just trade.
Right.
Like I have watermelons, you have animal pelts, let's trade. And then at some point, like a piece of metal came as representation of your wealth at home. That transitions a conversation in and of itself, but that only happened because one day we all just agreed like that we're going to march forward with money. This is the new
That's it. Yeah.
And I think you raised a really strong point of this could be, when we talk about the future, I think it really comes down to how much on the same page we all are. If we all can, I don't need to agree with you. Like what provoked you to come on this podcast and us to have a conversation and rekindle a relationship is we didn't agree on something. You reached out to me and you're like, I just want to hear your thoughts on why you said this. Yeah. And we may not even leave the conversation going, he changed my mind.
I don't think that's a good thing. I mean,
that's a good thing, and I may not agree, but you have to be able to leave those conversations understanding.
Well, understanding and like I think not only understanding, but like I think it's a true sign of like maturity in my own life has been like not being butthurt about that.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? Like because, like, there's not, like, especially on things, like, that are more, like, social issues, like, there's no laws behind these, like, so really, like, we can just agree to disagree and, like, still be friends and carry on.
But what do we do when people in this world want to make laws around that?
Yeah,
right?
For sure. That's where it gets, like
we got Canada.
No, 100%.
Put pen to paper and said 70-plus pronouns this is law. And if you dead name someone or use the wrong pronouns, you will get a fine, do it enough times, you will see the inside of a cell. Yeah. So that's snuffing out conversation.
I did hear about that in Canada, and like it's like once again it's probably controversial, but like I mean the only reason I say it's controversial is because I agree with people should make an effort to do those kinds of things.
Yes.
I certainly don't. I mean, making a law out of it doesn't make any sense. I mean, that's like, you know what? Like that doesn't. You're like, okay, like, but like to me that doesn't even like that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And that's coming from someone who like, I mean, I'm pretty like. I lean on, one side about those kinds of things.
Right.
Like, yeah, we should all make an effort to do that because, like, I believe that this, and this, and this, and like whatever from my experience. But at the same time, it's like, well, like they're actually making that's a thing,
right?
Like,
and the scary part is
that's
I
weird.
agree with you. Here's the deal: we're drawing the line between character and law. You know, like what's the sign of good character? Just you being a caring person.
Right.
Like if you knew me for how many years as Alexander, and I look at you and I go, I'm now Bill. Like again, whatever, do whatever you want. Yeah. But like the second I made that exclamation, and you go, well, I've always known you as this, and I'm gonna keep. That speaks about you. But that also doesn't mean we need this authoritarian aspect of like, you deserve damnation.
For sure.
We just gotta, first, there's 2 layers to that. This person sucks. But also the guy that, was like, Billy's got man titties. Like, that guy sucks too. Like, there's just people that suck.
Yeah.
I don't think they deserve to go to jail. But also, I don't know. Like, how do you curb that behavior? You curb that behavior by everybody calling the long line, calling line 3 the line, right? Like, once we all start getting on the same page of who cares, call people what they want to be called, treat people with respect, I think that develops us, that's going to curb more opinions, that you're only going to entrench yourself further in dead naming and not using pronouns when we throw a fine at you. And you're going to be like, well, now I'm going to call you a she even more than I was before. It's like, that's not how you curb behavior, at least appropriately.
Well, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, and like that, I mean, and this is a whole conversation, but like, I mean, these things have been around forever. Like the concept that like the non-binary is a new thing is not true at all. They've just always been in the gutters. It's been in NYC nightclubs since like the 1940s. It's just becoming more, I don't want to say it's mainstream because it's not becoming mainstream, but people are starting to come out more.
Right.
And so they never had a name for this. Like, what is non-binary? Like, well, okay, they never had a name for that necessarily. Like, it was just, at one point, it was called cross-dressing.
Right.
And you got thrown in jail for cross-dressing. Yeah, anywhere, right? So, like, this has always been a thing. So, it's like, but it's like one of those things where it seems like when politics like took a hold of this, I think things get blown out of proportion way more than, and then it turns into a law, like in Canada. Yes. It's just like, it's tough because you want people to be able to be loved and to be able to live their lives in their most authentic way. And like also you want to say like fuck you to the people who are straight up just like I'm not doing that, or I'm going to like purposely hurt you by doing this. Right. Like, like that sucks too. Like, but like that should be a social thing in my opinion. Like it shouldn't involve anything else. Like,
right. Like
this person
the
sucks.
N-word,
like,
right?
Yeah.
Like nobody's going to throw you in jail for saying the N-word.
No, it's 100%.
But you sure as shit aren't saying it because socially we police it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole like, I mean, and we could go on on that forever, but it is like, that is weird in Canada, and I heard that actually on the Joe Rogan show.
Yeah, well, that's what
banished
Jordan Peterson away from Canada. Is he was brought on the committee to discuss this, and because he wasn't beating the liberal drum, he was just like, I am all for calling these people by their prefixes. It's just this should be reconsidered on the fact that this is becoming law. Like, this is just authoritarian.
Yeah.
And they spun him into some hateful conservative type. So my wrapping up thought, I'm going to sound like a real libertarian here, but like when you look at, you raised two great, or there's two combating points that you highlighted. I sit here and I go, how crazy is it that they got a law that's going to throw you in jail or fine you for using the wrong prefixes? And then you open my eyes up to a law that I didn't even realize that should, I don't care how conservative you are.
Yeah.
It should really put a prick in your spine that, whoa, they were throwing people in jail for wearing whatever the hell they want. Dude, I don't care if you're in a dress.
That's the thing on the other side is people don't know the history of any of this.
So
like
again,
when it comes to the queer community, people don't know the history. So all they see is like, oh, like all these kids are becoming trans, whatever that means, but it's like, no, that's not what's happening. Like, it's just more accepted. This has always been a thing.
Right.
And people were getting thrown in jail by the truckloads not too long ago.
So again,
so it's like, okay, where's the free? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like
the libertarian in me is, so look at, you've got, we as people on opposite sides of the spectrum can clearly say, I think laws against wearing whatever you want. You want to wear a swimsuit.
Clothing's clothing. Like,
right. Again, even then, free the nipple. Like, I don't get it. All of this is arbitrary.
Right.
But this is bullshit, the dress side of it. But also, again, Connor, even if you don't, you can identify as whatever you want.
Right.
If I want to just start calling you a fox,
right.
Nut up, dude.
Well, that actually is a thing.
Gross. I know it is. It's part of the 70. Trust me, I ridicule the 70+ pronouns enough. That's why I used it. Fox is one of them. That's insanity.
I think they're called fuzzies.
There's fuzzies too. That's enough.
That's something I
there's
learned
people
about
that
recently.
identify as foxes or pixies.
Yeah, no, I've heard about that.
So again, I think there's probably more of a mental aspect going on there than you probably are a fox.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially, but also, even if you identify, I am Connor, I identify as a man.
Yeah.
If I just to be a jerk, am calling you a fox, there shouldn't be a law that's like, well, he goes to jail. It's like, so the libertarian goes, both laws on both, we shouldn't combat anti-dress laws with anti-dead naming laws. It's just, let's stop drawing lines.
Yeah.
Let's just let socially people police themselves and let freedom flourish.
Yeah. Socially, people should police 100%. And I mean, that's it. And that's a good, I mean, at one point it was on this side and now it's on this side.
Right.
So everyone's like, well, it's like, well, I mean, if you look at both sides, like as far as that whole community goes, I mean, back then they were being thrown in jail for basically nothing by the truckloads and getting murdered, which they still do now. But now it's like on the other side, which is like equally like ridiculous. So it's
I agree. It's nowhere near to the severity it was in the 40s and everything else, but we can see it heading that way. And the excuse is to balance out what we used to have.
For sure.
And I think
it's an interesting thing because it really is just the other side of the spectrum, but it's not, in my opinion, doesn't make anything better. It's just the opposite side.
Right.
Like instead of throwing these people in jail, now you're just going to throw the other side of people in jail. Like it's really not helping anything.
And yet, you know what answers all the problems? Having sides. We just had a whole conversation about sides. The answer is having both sides converse with each other.
Yeah.
Like the second you can have a friend that Here's what changes that angry conservative's mind. The second he's sitting at a bar or whatever, he's eating dinner, and his pal becomes the one that wants to wear a dress, then their opinion immediately changes.
I mean, that's what happens.
Their son becomes the one that wants to wear a dress. Now their opinion immediately changes.
Yeah.
And so the heart of all, and again, that same queer person who looks at a conservative and can go, well, he's a Trumper and he's damn him to death. The reality is it's because you've never sat down and actually had a conversation
100%.
with them, and I think that exposure is going to be the answer to all of this.
100%. I mean, it always is, right? And that's why, but I think there's more of that than right? Like there's more of that. Like
100%.
I hardly ever run in. It's just that the two sides get highlighted and brought up
because of the media, because of our government, because of everything else
everywhere, right? Like but like I feel
but again, think about the line experiment. The goal is to make you feel alone, right? Like if you're a conservative-esque person, the goal is to make you feel like you're the only one harboring these feelings, because then you're alone and you start convincing yourself to think otherwise. But I think, again, to your point, if you push yourself to be uncomfortable and expose yourself to people you not normally would, that's where you're going to find out, like, oh, wow, I've been disillusioned in many
100%.
ways.
And that's what's happened to me. Like, it's made my eyes open in so many ways.
Same.
It's part of maturity, I think, getting older, right? But it's also part of just, like, having conversations and being, like, open to new ideas. So it's been really good for me, for sure. Because being able to see both. There's still things where I'm like, I will never ever, like, there's a few things, like if someone's like, and most of it has to do with like to be honest, religion. I mean, like, I'm a spiritual kind of guy, but like I don't, like, if you're gonna use, in my eyes, if you're gonna use that as a reason to be like a dick, then like I can't get on board with that. There's a few things I can't get on board with,
right?
You know, and
I agree there.
But other than that, I mean, you know, I you got to be able to see both sides.
That's the biggest key.
You know,
that's the key, and you really got to seek out fruitful conversations like this. But no, I think you raised some really great points. The heart, it's not blue, it's not red, it's purple. Mix it a little bit and find yourself in the middle.
Love that.
So, guys, wrapping up.
Yeah.
If you're new to the podcast, thank you for watching. Connor's a popular kid, so I'm sure he's brought you here, and I appreciate you listening. And if we made you laugh, if we made you think, the best thing you could do to support the podcast is share this podcast. Share the link on your Facebook, whatever it might be. But if you got other friends that you think might enjoy it, please share it. Again, I want to remind you that you can find all our content at the Rethink Tank Podcast website. So go to rethinktankpodcast.com. That's where all our content can be found. You can also join the new social media alternative, the Neuro Gym, where we don't censor you, and it's just an open forum where we encourage conversation with people that might be different than you. So check that out. And again, guys, I really appreciate listening. And Connor, thank you for coming out.
Yeah,
it's been a long
man.
time. We had
It's
a great
been fun,
conversation. So
Appreciate
guys,
it.
thanks again, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.